WSOU 89.5 FM. I'm Valentino, and I'm joined today with Will from Creeper. How you doing today, Will?
Not too bad, thank you, Valentino. I'm very warm here in Manchester. I don't know what's happened overnight. Just decided it is summer now. So I'm melting a little bit. Other than that, all
Even
good.
in New Jersey over here, it went from I want to say 40s, 50s, all the way to 80s. So no, no in between.
I honestly don't know how it happened. I didn't even notice it until today. It's so warm here now. And that's not like it's like here normally. Normally up here in the north of England, it's just miserable all the time.
And especially for me, I hate that wet heat. Heat is fine, but when it's humidity, that's the worst.
Oh, dude, absolutely. That's the worst thing ever. But it doesn't normally get like that here. Never this bad. It's really uncharacteristic of our country.
Yeah, absolutely. So diving right into it, not to put too much pressure, but I will say I've interviewed 85 different artists at my 4 or 5 years at WSOU, and we talked about a year ago for anybody that's interested on WSOU.net or the WSOU YouTube page. And that last interview I had is in my top 10 most favorite interviews I've done in my time here. So I am so excited to be diving in with you today and really diving into this new EP, new conversation.
Well, thank you, man. I had so much fun on that call as well before. It's really nice to speak to you again, and it's really cool to be thought of when this new record's coming out as well. So I appreciate it very much. It's nice to chat to you again.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. And one of the things that we talked about last year that I just want to even bring up before we even get into the new EP is when we talked, only Annabelle, Born Cold were released, and I think maybe Cyanide. And you kept telling me, oh, the whole rest of the record, there's a whole second half of this record you haven't heard yet, that the people haven't heard yet, that is going to take everyone off, sweep them off their feet. And my God, were you right? Critical reception has been incredible. Statistics, your top 5 on Spotify is all this record. It's amazing. It's unlike anything I've heard in a very, very long time.
Well, thank you, man. Yeah, the whole goal with the last album was to completely just destroy everything, completely level the whole thing, the whole band, the idea of the band to nothing, and rebuild the whole thing. So it was quite a gamble for us in a lot of ways, whether people would get it, whether it would be too much. We just decided that didn't really matter, It didn't really matter what people thought. The idea that I always think great art comes from being completely reckless, and that's what we were trying to do. It would have been so boring to make the same thing twice. It would have been no fun in that for anyone. And I think that's so often what people think they want from a band, just to kind of make the same record over and over again. But yeah, I really appreciate you saying that, and it's definitely one of the things we've been most proud of is that our fans kind of followed us down the rabbit hole quite a lot, and we ended up in a place that was that's now allowed us to be even more creative and push the walls out for even further for what we're doing next.
Well, the fans have a receptor for what's genuine and not. When a band is pushing their sound for the sake of, this is probably what we need to do next, or hey, this is a really, really cool thing I want to try, and I love the way, I've always wanted to explore this. And I know me personally, I will never forget when I put on the record for the first time. I think it was July 31st, and I got through the first 3 or 4 songs, and then Paradise hit, and then you get to that bridge, it was just the saxophone solo, and it was one of the most wild experiences of just listening to music and being what am I in for?
Oh man, yeah, it was such a meticulously crafted thing that we wanted it to take you, and trying to get to that point in the record. We're thinking about conditioning the listener and taking you from one place to another slowly and gradually, so it doesn't feel jarring. That was the challenge of it all. So we worked really, really hard on that thing. So I'm really glad that that was a point for you that you kind of you got it. I think that sometimes when bands change their sound as well, it's to appease radio or to try and get bigger, to trend hop. And that for us, that was kind of the opposite reason of why we changed that sound. It was that, if anything, you're not going to hear a lot of these songs on the radio anytime soon. The Imagine Dragon sound that people seem to be chasing so much, that you don't really hear a lot of that on in any of our music. It's kind of, if anything, it's even though these are maybe more conventional pop structured songs, they're a lot less kind of for radio, you know. You're not going to hear some of these songs. Like a song like 4 years ago on the last record, which is a duet, but like it's got an orchestra, and it's a real brooding song. I think that a song like that, well, you never hear on the radio. It's the opposite of a radio record, even though it's a lot poppier. If that makes any sense.
Exactly, and it's just even like it's so. You know, typically like the average trajectory of like a punk band is like, you know, hard punk, a little softer punk, and then pop. Whereas like to go from like, you know, punk just to write like 50s dino rock emo is just that's so cool. Like I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, it was definitely a really odd band. I was saying this to someone the other day. I think we got to a point when we realized that like we didn't really fit in with everything that was around us. We had lots of friends in kind of pop punk bands and things, but we always felt like the black sheep and always felt like a bit odd and a bit out of place. Regardless of who we were touring with, we were always never going to be like a cool guy band. That was never going to be our deal. So a little while ago, we just decided, you know, let's just lean into the weird a little bit more. Let's just kind of try and lean into the things that make us odd and the things that make us not quite the right shape for the scenes that we've been playing for. Let's just kind of make that weirder. And I think that's really been an aid to us in a sense. I think it's like it's allowing us now. I think we've always been like the band that's playing like a rocky horror ballad to a pop punk audience. That, you know, like they're often are staring at us like, what are you guys playing? But we started this now as going, well, that's the stuff we like about the band. The things that we don't like about the band are the more conventional aspects. So let's tone those down and make this sillier. That's kind of where we're at with it now.
And again, diving into the new EP out July 30th, American Noir. Obviously, we've heard the first single, Midnight. Again, most radio songs don't have like, you know, that piano intro that like sounds like album 2 extended.
Yeah, well, a lot of these songs were written to get to the point when we had the album complete. We had written a load of material, like a real surplus of material exists. I think we had like 60 songs or something for that last album. You know, like it was a long process to get to like you know 11, 12 songs what we have on the album. So we had like things that we were knocking off, either because thematically we had another piece that fit the puzzle better. So like, for example, like an intro song, the introduction to a record is always, for me, like a really, really important part of setting the tone for what's coming. And it's the start point, you know. All my favorite records are like that, you know, like they're like opening, you press play or put them on your record player and you're suddenly transported to a world, like a gate. The first song is like a gate. And I wrote a load of songs that were just intro songs just to try and get that right, you know. But what ended up happening was I had too many intro songs, so you could only use one. So like I had all this stuff, and I had to really, really be brutal with what I thought was right for it. And so yeah, it ended up kind of having this surplus of material that we had in the bank, now unfinished kind of songs that sit on this kind of this musical graveyard on my phone, like this Dropbox account that has like all of these little half dead songs. And so what it was like was we just kind of, my girlfriend kept saying to me that her favorite Creeper song is the song we just released, this song Midnight. And she, like, I remember when we first got together, I was playing her all these wild things. Dude, you would hear some of these songs and be like, they're so ridiculous. Some of them are too far one way, some of them are not far enough, you know, like they're just absolutely crazy. And she would say, well, it's a real shame we don't put this material out like this. Like these songs are great, and they kind of sit in this kind of purgatory on your phone. And so we had a lineup change. We had a new drummer, and we were about to live events are starting to be happening. I don't know if you've heard that we have a download festival next week. There's like over here, they're in Donington. They're doing a government kind of run, like a trial run festival, like with no social distancing. So that's next week. So we had all this stuff to come out and to talk about. And I was like, well, so about 4 or 5 months ago, we all started working in secret on these songs, and we started putting them together and like finishing them off. I think Hannah went into London and recorded some grand piano. I had already done a lot of my vocal in Los Angeles when we were doing the last record. But Ian had to put guitars and things. We had to put drums to it. Like these are like scrappy little demos before. So we've had this as like our first project to come back with this new to launch live shows again. Kind of like a celebration of coming out of the darkness.
Exactly. Now, another question that I kind of had is more geared towards those live shows is obviously, you know, with album 2, you had your own, you know, aesthetic to it. The whole aesthetic of the record was very carefully planned, from the album cover to, like, you know, the white suits and all that, and the makeup. Now, this new EP kind of has a very different aesthetic to it. When you play live, are you going to lean more towards, you know, the new American Noir or album 2?
Well, American Noir is like an extension of the record in terms of its narrative. It takes place after the death of Ro, who is the protagonist on the last album. So the cover of the record is supposed to show the death scene that happens atop St. Peter's Mountain, which is a place in our story. So we got to work with this amazing photographer over here, someone I really wanted to collaborate with for a long time, and I really respect, a person named Harris Newcomb. And like, luckily, we asked him. He doesn't normally do like band shoots like with like a full band. You know, he normally does like a solo artist. He works in fashion. He does all sorts of things. But luckily, I got on a Zoom with him, and I really got on with him, and he agreed to do it. So I told him the whole story, and you can imagine, you've had me do this to you, so you know what it's like. So I spoke to him for ages, and like, he got really excited about this story and this piece of drama. And I said, so that there were these men behind the curtain that are kind of like act as kind of the hand of fate or the hand of God in this scenario. And so he was like, well, let's get the boys dressed up as these men behind the curtain. Yeah. Let's get a dead Ro and Annabelle in a wedding dress, because that's how the story starts. And we'll make it like Death in the Family, which is, you know, the Batman comic book. And luckily, he mentioned it, and I've got like loads of Batman comics here, and so I pulled it down, and so we started trying to work out how to do it. So like by this point in our story, Ro has become human because he started to feel human emotions, and so on the cover, like this photograph that Harris took of us, he looks the most human he's been. So yeah, it was kind of all about that. That's how we got to that visual aspect. And American Noir was. The title itself was the original title for Sex, Death, and the Infinite Void. It was like you know, like in Star Wars, they were making Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. It was called Blue Harvest. They had like a working title.
Yeah.
American Noir was our working title for Death and the Infinite Void. And so we all tied together, really. Like it's an extension. So we are going to be really drawing on the visuals from the EP. But in the live shows in December, you'll see the idea I've come up with for those shows is that there's be so many costume changes. So you'll see the characters start off being very effeminate and very androgynous, and then slowly over the course of the show, you'll watch him become human to the point of him dying at the end. It's gonna be a real. It's supposed to tell a story with the outfits. It's a nightmare. My girlfriend's like the production designer on it all at the moment. So we do all these trials all the time, and she's painting my face in loads of different ways to try and work out how we're going to be able to change things quickly. It's a complete nightmare. It's a complete nightmare.
I absolutely love it. And I was wondering why, because I know that like in the past, Creeper has never had an album cover, an EP cover with the actual band on it. It's always been like, you know, other images or artwork. So I think like the fact that like, you know, everyone's playing the character, you're playing the character you play in the album, you know, Hannah's playing the character that she plays in the record. It's just it's so cool to see that on the cover itself.
We one of the things we really struggled with on the last record was on our first album, when we came to America and performed, we couldn't we're a much smaller size out there. And so like the venues we play, we either be in a supporting role for a band, or we'd be playing very small, intimate shows of our own while people were discovering us. But we couldn't bring like a full theatrical show like we could in the UK, where it was like, where we could do on our first album. There was The Stranger, there was James Sice, and there was Madeline. And like the girl who plays Madeline is actually my girlfriend now. But like, I mean, we couldn't bring them all out. We couldn't afford to bring that many people out, and the rooms were not the right size to be able to do that sort of show. So I always felt like we were shortchanging people in America who didn't get to see, and in like further afield as well in other countries where we couldn't do those shows. So I made a conscious decision on this one that the band would be playing the roles of the characters. So you got to see the band, the characters, everything all at once. Regardless, you could upscale it or downscale it, you know, but like it would, you'd get to see them regardless. So what you were seeing on the screen, you did get to see in real life, and you came to the show in one way or another. Does that make sense?
Oh, definitely, yeah. And like it forces the theatrical element, whereas like, you know, if you're gonna see Creeper live, you have to see the show itself. You know, it can't be like, oh, we're gonna add it on for production value. No, it is integral to the show.
Yeah, well, this is where we started to kind of see Creeper more as now. Like it was funny because I never think we've never been good at being like a conventional band. I've always kind of saw it as like a series of just kind of art pieces we just made over the years. And the music is a big part of it, but like there's so much more that goes into it. It's not a band wearing a costume, more as like the costume is what you're coming to see, and the music's a part of the costume. That makes sense. It sounds so crazy as I'm saying it out loud.
No, yeah, exactly. And it feeds into like, you know, the story itself. You know, it really, it makes it a three-dimensional piece of artwork, not just audio or visual.
Yeah, like the idea is that like over time, our end goal really is to create something that's almost akin to what the Rock Europa show does when it comes to a town, where people can dress up and come and see this thing, whatever it is we're doing. You know, like it's Creepers in town. You can come out, you can dress up, you can be yourself. This is a place you can go and you can just lose yourself for an evening. You're going to see some really crazy, like it's going to be a lot, but like when kids know that when we come through their town, there's a safe place you can go. It's going to be really silly. You can dress up as whatever character from whatever record, whatever you want to do. You just go and be you. And that's kind of the mission statement. It's like an immersive experience of people, of like-minded people who want to see a show. I think someone told me a story about Gene Simmons the other day. And there's a quote from him. And everyone was saying it like I think he said, yeah, people make fun of us because it's you know, it's ridiculous, it's over the top. But like, you know, it's a circus. But like, you know, do you want to are you going to buy a ticket to come see it or not? Because of course you are. Like, you know, that's kind of how I see Creeper. You'd want to come and see whatever it is we're doing, the silliness, like how ridiculously over the top it's about to all get. I think that like I'd rather be on that side of the fence rather than like the more reserved, scared introvert. Like we're trying to build up to a place where everyone can feel comfortable and to be themselves, you know.
And it's been a full year since live shows, like obviously like more than that. How is it going to be like emotionally to get back on that stage again? It's definitely been a long time.
Yeah, I think it's an odd one, isn't it? Like I think that the problem is I've just been this is the longest time I've been since I was like 15, like without performing. I'm not too sure how it's going to be. I think it's going to probably be emotional, but like we're always in character when we play, so it's like, you know, like it kind of there's this always this shield between you and like feeling overwhelmed sometimes. That's kind of why we started doing the characters in the first place, you know. So but it's going to be exciting because next Saturday is the first time people play since like February 2020 when we did the Baby Metal run. So it's very exciting for us. We're really, really stoked and excited to be doing a proper show as well. We're headlining a stage at Download Festival over here. So we're pulling out all the stops and doing a lot of really silly things. So yeah, it's a lot of costuming and a lot of preparation is going into it. So yeah, it should be a really fun evening, I think. And then afterwards, we get to watch Shikari, which is great. So that we can run over to the other stage and see them.
Oh, I love it. And again, like I feel like every show is gonna feel like a very first concert ever. I think like that's gonna feel like you're like, you know, you're the first time you performed or the first time you saw a show. It's all gonna feel like so fresh again because we've been so starved for it for so long.
Yeah, exactly. Do you know what show you're going to see first? Like, is there anything lined up over there
So
you're going to see?
actually, I saw my very first post-pandemic concert on Saturday. It was a Knuckle Puck at the Atlantic City Beer and Music Festival, and
Oh, that's awesome.
it was just chills the entire time. Again, it was I'm like you in the sense that I haven't not been to a concert since I was 12 or 13 years old, and so having this like decade of just full shows and then nothing is
Yeah, it's so sad. It feels like we've kind of been stolen from, Like, that's what it feels like. We
exactly.
lost these years.
Yep. And yeah, it's just like seeing seeing these tours get announced. It really is. Things are starting to feel like normal again. Finally.
I know. All we need is international travel to open, and then everything will be back to normal in some sort of way.
Yeah. And now diving back into the live shows, another thing I definitely want to ask you about. You touched upon it before, but Jake Fogarty on drums. He's the new drummer for Creeper. How has that been? How'd you guys find him? What's the story behind that?
So we've like when Dan left a little while back, we were in no real rush to find someone at the time because obviously we've been sat at home all this time. Like there's been no reason to do that, and also inviting someone into this like big ball of chaos that this band is, like you don't want to do that too hastily. So what we ended up doing was just sitting on it for a little minute and just leaving it be. We didn't have anything to promote, and I always feel like with Creeper, I would rather post nothing than post. You get to that point that some bands do where they just are just posting for the sake of posting. Do you know what I mean? So like it's kind of becomes this like they have no content, they have nothing, but they're just posting old things all the time. So I was just like, let's just leave this and we'll come back to this when we're ready. And that's like it's kind of making something small, a small perfect bricks building the perfect wall. That's always how I try and see it. We ended up getting to a point where we were going to do this EP and we were going to come back. I wanted to announce it all at the same time, make it like packaged nice. Part of the reason I wanted the band on the cover of this last record was because of Jake's involvement. I thought it was a great way to introduce him to our fan base as well.
Yeah, of course.
We auditioned 3 drummers, I think. It's a great period to be in, man. Because we've been playing for so long now. We've just got friends all over the place who play in different bands. So it was. It's not like when you're a kid. When you're a kid and you first start your first punk band. Like no one wants to play with you because like, I was like, oh, is it going to be like that? But obviously, like it was really, really cool. We had, everyone we asked was delighted to try out, and we ended up going with Jake because he's such a dynamic player. One of the things we always had with Dan was that he was never the most dynamic live, and with Jake, we feel like it's up to everything. It's so nice playing with him, and rehearsing with him is like some of the best times. I think it's some of the best times we've ever played together since he's joined.
Wow.
And he's a powerhouse. He's so big as well. Like he's like that, and that sounds ridiculous, but like I'm such a small little. I'm like a skeleton boy, and he's like a proper man. He's like really muscly, like this big, like. And so when he plays like a hardcore drummer. He used to play in a band called Crooks. Like I'm from over here. Don't know if you ever heard them. They were really, really good.
I haven't given.
If you haven't heard them, you should check out this song. What's it called? I think it's called "And the Peaceful Days Remain," something like that. It's really, really good. But he was just a machine, and yeah, like it's been a really natural fit. He's like, so someone that we're just delighted to have and to start touring with, and I can't wait to come back over to play for him in America and bring Jake with us for the first time, because I think people will be surprised at how good he is. He's really, really good.
And that's the thing is, like, if you're having fun, studio, if you're having a blast not recording, but rehearsing, that's going to translate live. The audience can feed off of that. They know.
Exactly. And I think like punk and hardcore kids kind of like can smell like when someone's like not being sincere immediately, or not really from that world. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like the great thing about Jake was that he had his roots in punk and hardcore as well, but also he's such a brilliant drummer. He could play a variety of styles. So it kind of felt like he'd almost had the same sort of journey as us. he started playing drums because he, you know, was into this sort of music, and but learned all these other techniques alongside it. And so really natural fit in that way. And like years of playing in, he played in this band Casey from over here as well on their last tour. He's just been around hardcore and punk rock as long as we have, and so it's just kind of works out great, considering like he's like a punk and hardcore guy who doesn't really necessarily play that anymore, and that's kind of where we're at, you know, with our band. So it's like a really good fit.
It's like the same thing with Fall Out Boy, where I think Pete Wentz said something along the lines of, Andy recorded Fully Ado in 5 days, that like 13-song record. And he's like, how'd you do it? And Andy was like, well, I was a metal drummer before, so, you know.
Exactly, right? Yeah, like it's that stuff, it's easy to play for somebody who's been playing blast beats their entire life or whatever. You know, like,
yeah. Now, did Jake actually like record drums on American Noir, or?
No, we recorded the drums. We had this in between period when we didn't quite have Jake yet. We were still making our mind up. We needed to record some stuff, so we knew this drummer. No one's actually asked me this yet, which is cool.
Awesome.
But like, so basically, when we would go over to LA, me and Ian, we would go invite there and hang out with Zandy. Zandy knew this drummer called Randy. It sounds like a Dr. Seuss book. But that's really funny.
That is
anyway,
so good.
but he does. And he said to me, like, oh, I got this guy, Randy, he calls himself the drum whore. And I was like, oh, that's a weird thing. Like, that's a weird thing to call yourself. Like, I'm not really sure how I feel about that.
Yeah.
But then we met him, and he's like this, he's an older dude, but he is like the gnarliest dude. And he would come in when we were demoing things and just like put like just play for us while we were, you know, we could rehearse in the room and stuff. And he was brilliant. He was like a really, really good drummer, but he's an older guy. And he was Ringo Starr's touring drummer. Isn't that insane? He was like Ringo Starr's touring drummer. And he would tell us all these crazy stories about Ringo Starr. Like this Randy at the drum whore, and his email was like the drum whore at hotmail.com or something. And,
especially at Hotmail too. That's so funny.
It was so wild. Me and Ian had put MIDI drums on the thing, and we needed a drummer, and we recorded with Randy for like demos and things before we'd send them back to Dan, and Dan would complete it over here or wherever he would do it. So I was like, oh, can you see if Randy will just do this, play these MIDI drums, but like better? And he did. And so it was kind of cool to finally put something out with Randy, because Randy nothing that we did with him in those demos, none of them kind of saw the light of day. And he did a really great job. It was really fun. And even like, so now Jake's, it's cool hearing Jake play the songs now as well, because you know, he's just a machine as well. We don't have to worry anymore because we've actually got a drummer now. It was one of those things, man, you know, like we didn't want to like rush in to getting somebody else. Like I felt that would be a bad move. You want to make sure you got the right person. So yeah, it was funny. Randy the drummer is the guy who played.
And you know what? Like, you can say that American Noir is Beatles certified. You know, you got Ringo Starr's former drummer. I mean,
exactly. There you go, right?
That's so
silly,
good.
isn't it? So silly.
Beatles certified. And I do totally understand what you're saying about like rushing in to get a new member. You know, there's a lot of instances where bands just like they get the first guy they see because they're desperate, like, and then it obviously causes problems within the band. And as we've discussed in this interview and last year, there are so many cases where it's the community in the band and their relationship in the band is very, very important to outside.
Yeah, and I think that like the amount of time you spend in a van, you know, like especially like touring America is like so difficult. I don't know how, because like, in the UK, like you do like 2 weeks, you're like, oh, that's time to go home, you know, like, oh, everything's done. Oh, that was fun. But you're not even getting started when you tour in America, you know, like it's just so long. So especially over there, like when you're in green vans and stuff, which is it's one of my favorite things to do, to be honest, like hang out with the guys and get those ridiculously sized drinks you guys have, like from the service stations and things, these big gulps. That's just awesome. I love the idea of just having that, like an endless supply of Coca-Cola. It's just the best. Anyway, so like when we were over doing those things, you can kill each other in those vans. You spend so long in that van. I remember the first time we toured over there, we were like driving from somewhere to somewhere, I can't remember. And I downloaded like loads of podcasts and stuff. And I remember like being really, I was like super patient, which is really unlike me. I'm really not very patient at all. I'm nightmare on drives normally. But I kept looking at my phone and I was like, how have we been driving for 10 hours straight? Like, how is that possible? If you did that in my country, you'd be in the sea, you know, like you just fall off the side. And but you can on those long drives, and like, you know, they get much bigger than 10 hours sometimes. Like you all in the van together. If you haven't got like a strong foundation, if you haven't got like a really core tight group of friends that you're touring with, you can just go mad, and people can just rub you up the wrong way, and then that ruins the whole experience and everything you're doing, you know. So yeah, it's totally important. I think that like if you've got a good friendship there, then the rest of it kind of comes a lot easier, you know.
Yeah, and I remember this when I was a kid, but like we went to Utah, Arizona, and especially those areas where it's just desert for like hundreds of miles, and you're just driving on a single road, and there's no one else in that road, and you can just keep going and keep going. It's wild.
I was
It is
always
really
amazed
insane.
at that. Like I was always amazed, like just the flat, the desert, you know, like me just driving. I'm like, oh my God, my phone signal's going. And we're just going to be like this with nothing around for ages. If we crash now, no one would find us.
Yep,
We'd
yep.
just be gone.
Oh, and like, you know, you're driving and like, you know, you're doing like 80, it feels like you're doing like 20 because the road is so long in the distance.
Oh man, there was this one story. We were on tour in America with water parks, and it was a band. It was us, Too Close to Touch, and water parks, and we were touring in this crazy van. The Bled lent us their bass cab or something. Hannah had a keyboard that we just found. Our friend over there just found. Didn't have a sustain pedal because we couldn't afford to get stuff over. It's like when we first started touring America, and so we're touring in this like party bus. I guess that's what they're called. You know, like you know, like when you get like it's like prom or something. I don't know what they're for.
Yeah,
I have
yeah,
no
I know what
idea.
you mean.
This is the one and only time I've been in a party bus. And unfortunately, it was for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. But like our friend's brother had one that he was doing like kind of like nights out on or whatever, and he lent it to us to go and tour. So we're all sleeping in this party bus. Hannah is sleeping on a parcel shelf. It's all crazy. We're all just, like, there's people everywhere, and it was awful. We had like there's loads of weapons in there. There was like a machete and like a I remember playing Chain Reaction and like hanging out with all the kids outside and just showing them all this stuff we had with a nightstick and stuff. It was mad. Anyway, I'm really digressing, but we were driving down someplace, and our driver, this guy called Rafe, he plays in a really cool hardcore band. He like took a wrong turn, and we were driving like down the middle of nowhere, like this one kind of like really thin road in like an onion farm. There was like an onion farm. That's all I remember. It was the middle of the night. And he realized he took the wrong turns. He tried to turn the thing around with the trailer, and he got stuck, just jammed across the road. So like you couldn't get a car through. It was like essentially a roadblock, but like it was the van, and this really crazy old party bus for the weapons. Anyway, so like there was like mud everywhere. So we get out, and Ian's like trying to dig the van out of the mud with this machete. And a guy like turns up, like we see a car on the horizon, and we're like so excited, but, oh my God, this guy's gonna help us. And it was this Mexican man who got out of the car, and we all ran over, but Ian had the machete. It all looked crazy, you know, like it was just mud everywhere. And there was like all these weird English people like, oh, hello, can you help us? And the guy got like really overwhelmed and just got back in his car and drove away. We were like, oh no, we're gonna die in this onion farm or whatever we were at, like, and this onion field. And then, like, I mean, I'm talking like 20 minutes later, we saw another car on the horizon, and it was a tractor. That lovely Mexican man went back and got his tractor and chained us to it and pulled us out of the mud.
Oh,
so
that's
a nice story. It's a happy ending. And I think like a bunch of the guys have little onion tattoos because of that story. Oh,
I'm
cute.
just like loving the image of the whole band in their like black calloused heart jackets with like the black eyeliner, like with machetes, like help us, please.
We must have looked absolutely insane. The thing is, because I'm always wearing, like on tour, it's impossible to get all that makeup off. So I'm always wearing certain an indescript amount of makeup at all times anyway. Because often we play the show and there'd be no shower in the venue, so you just try and wipe as much as you could off and then just get in the van and fall asleep. So the likelihood was we just must have looked absolutely crazy on the side of this road.
That is such a funny story. I absolutely love that. That's so cool.
I mean, that stuff was just happening all the time on that tour. There was we went through like all different types of weather. The party bus broke down 100 times. We missed a show in Seattle, but the Madden brothers paid us anyway because they were sweethearts. And yeah, like we hung out with Austin all the time. He was just lovely. Our party bus window broke because we went through a hailstorm. At the top of there was like on the parcel shelf, there was a little window and it smashed. And then there were loads of bees in there for ages. It was horrible, but it was also the best.
And like, I feel like every story I've heard about a party bus, it's never like, oh, everything went smoothly and nothing bad happened. Like every party bus story I've heard has always had something attached to it that's like, you're not going to believe what happened next.
I don't know what it is about them. They've got some sort of weird curse in them. But
Exactly.
it was extremely chaotic. I remember I was getting pulled over by the police on that tour, and Rafe had like the nightstick in the driver's side door, and the policeman saw him and he was going to come around. And as the policeman was walking around the van to come on board the party bus, we had to hide all the weapons like from the police officers. They were all illegal. It was mad. I was like, this is crazy. But like, you know, I hadn't seen that many weird. There's like a bow and arrow, all sorts of stuff on that bus, man. It was weird.
It's like weirdly medieval weapons too.
I know. It was like a bow and arrow, a nightstick, a machete. There was like loads of pepper spray. We had loads of stuff on this bus. That like the thing is, it was there before we got there. So obviously we're not going to not play with it because it was so bored at the time. But it's just like, so extremely illegal in certain places. Like so, yeah, it was weird, really weird.
That is so funny. I absolutely love it. Diving back into the American Noir real quick. No, I love it. Those stories are so cool. I do have to ask though about this new EP. There's a question that I've had. Obviously, with Sex, Death, and the Infinite Void, you have a lot of like these interludes, a lot of these like stuff that services the story. In the American Noir, do you have any like interludes or any like spoken word stuff like you did on that last record?
Yeah, there's 3. The first one I wrote a poem for, and that kind of starts the whole thing. It kind of opens this game of Jumanji, and the other 2 are musical interludes that Ian had devised, and they were like we both spoke about like a brief on how to sew the songs together essentially. Because when you've got like a full length, it's so much easier because you can. You've got so much room to do things. You can gradually take someone from a few different types of song by, you know, you've got all this space, all this time. With an EP, you've only got so long to do that with. So we had to really think on our feet about ways to make these songs transition and not seem jarring, because there's quite a few different styles we're playing with on this EP in a short space of time. So yeah, it was really, really fun. It was fun to do something a little bit different as well, because every interlude in the last one did have some poetry or you know, or something pushing along, but this one's only at the very start of this EP as a poem this time around. It's very silly, but I really like it. I'm really proud of it.
No, but that's really cool, especially like musical interludes help like if there's ever sharp tone changes or whatever, like it can help ease that too.
Yeah, this is kind of getting back to what I was trying to say to you before, you know, about conditioning the listener, keeping the listener in mind. And that's what we're always trying to do when we're making these things. It's about a whole piece rather than like individual singles or like, you know, a cheap pop. So like putting the interludes in just allows us to think about when someone's listening to it somewhere, wherever they are in the world. You want to make sure that it's not jarring. It's not like something that catches you off guard. And if it does catch you off guard, you want it to be because you wanted the listener to be caught off guard. Do you know what I mean? It's like a way of controlling that listening experience.
And like I understand exactly what you're saying, and I also think that it's super cool because the last record was so like poem heavy with the interludes. Having the 2 musical interludes here is going to be cool. Like I don't think I've ever heard a musical interlude or just instrumental on a Creeper track.
Yeah, we've never done it before. It was, I don't know. It's. I think sometimes like you know, like the bands and producers have been desperate to control the way their music is kind of digested for such a long time. I remember like learning about the wall of sound that Phil Spector used to have, you know, and how much he hated stereo because when you had stereo speakers, you could set your speakers up wrong, and you're suddenly listening to his work in a way that he didn't intend it to be listened to, because, you know, if you set your one speaker up pointing the wrong way, you're not hearing it properly. Do you know what I mean? So that's why they preferred mono back then, when the stereo revolution was happening. But like in this regard, it's a similar sort of principle. It's just that like we don't. I want it to be enjoyed as a piece, you know. And I think like moving things along is, and keeping the listener in mind, you know, all the time. Like the listener is paramount to us when we're writing these things. It's about a journey, you know, like it's about taking someone from one place to another, and these things just help along with that. It helps it seeming like a collection of songs and more like a considered journey.
Now, in terms of like that journey and like obviously lyrical themes, did you have to rewrite a few of the lyrics to like fit the narrative of like Ro and Annabelle, or did they already kind of work as itself in those phases?
We worked a couple of things, but like the majority of it, like because a lot of these songs are songs I've written for Hannah. So my character, obviously, Ro, the passing away, that we deal with that at the beginning of this EP, and then over the course of the record, Hannah takes more of a lead, which is kind of was intentional anyway, but it's kind of worked out very nicely here and very conveniently, considering this is kind of the record that picks up where the last one left off, you know. My character wouldn't be singing on the last song because he's dead.
That makes perfect sense. So I've got one more question for you today. First of all, I just want to thank you so much again for talking to me today. As I mentioned before, last Creeper interview I did with you, Will, was in my top 10 favorite interviews. This one is just as exciting. I just love your passion about the music. And, you know, I talked to a lot of artists, and a lot of them, it's like, oh yeah, the new record's good. It's fine. I like it. Whereas I just love like diving into your mind, hearing about how excited you are about this music. So thank you again.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. Like it's unfortunately, like it feels like we're this is all life and death stuff all the time for us here. We kind of really live it, and it's you know, I think I may have told you last time about the curse of that last record, the Creeper curse, we call it.
Yes.
And that we still live that to this day. If anything that can go wrong will go wrong, and but it's great. We care about it so much. If we didn't, like, if it wasn't like everything to us, it would have been so much easier just to have given up on it ages ago and gone and got a job at a bank or something. But we're still here, and I really appreciate people like you taking the time to check it out and to listen to these very silly creations of us. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. And I'll definitely say, we talked about it last year about, you know, the Creeper curse of like that second record and how hard it was and what you went through. But it wasn't until I actually listened to that podcast, like of the documentary of it, where I was like, oh my God, this band literally went through hell and back to write this record. Like all of the stuff that every single one of you guys had to deal with. Like, it's just, I really, really understand now. And also all my friends and all that stuff, all those songs, it adds new weight to it after hearing that.
Well, yeah, it's definitely, I think, one of the most difficult couple of years of our lives. It's not the most difficult. It was very heavy times. But it's what's kind of cool now is like, and I think this is also why this EP has been so nice for us to do, because it's kind of a redemption and like that record, the last one. We're like most proud of that record out of everything we've done. Sex, Death, and Infinite Void is our favorite, but like it also has a lot of trauma attached to it for us. So like it's funny because I had to listen to it for the first time in ages the other day, because I have this show coming out next week and I have to run through things, and like it's difficult. You know, like a guitar player, you play through you can play for the record as you're listening to it. It's weird as a singer doing that. You're singing along with yourself. You just feel like an idiot. But like going through and like kind of refreshing myself in the songs and the material and listening to it for the first time, I can remember where we were when specific songs were made. I can literally hear like the liquor on my breath as I'm singing some of this stuff. Sometimes like, well, that was very slurry for me. But like, you know, like the all that went on at that time period is kind of very much there for everyone to see if you look deep enough on that album. I think doing the new EP has allowed us to kind of have a little bit of redemption, and And something a little we associate you now with a fresh start and kind of leaving the last campaign and the last narrative that we're about to go and finally promote in a happy way rather than one that's of extreme trauma.
It's like, yeah, like having okay, ending it on a really, really good high note. Then
Yeah, it's like a
remembering
secret happy ending, you know, like
yeah.
it's before it was like watching Who Framed Roger Rabbit and the bit where you know that the evil guys reveal themselves to be the evil cartoon. And now this is like that little song that this EP is like the little song that all the cartoons sing together at the end. You know, it's the happy ending that didn't exist at the beginning.
And I know I've said it before, but I definitely give you credit in the sense that when you write about some trauma, it's like, you know, you can write music about it and it could be interpreted a lot of different ways. You don't always have to like hit the nail on the head with it. You know, you can be very, you know, vague. Whereas like in that like podcast documentary where it's like just discussing the trauma openly, just like talking about, yeah, we literally all of us were in a really rough place. That's like a lot harder to do. That's a lot more difficult to produce and just even like talk about.
It was a really interesting thing doing that podcast because our friend Giles made it over here, who's a journalist. He'd called me up. I was in the middle of the campaign for the last album. I was just beginning press, and he called me up about another podcast he was doing. There's lots of podcasts, and he called me up and asked me about the podcast, and I started talking to him about the record, and I hadn't heard from him in ages. So we spoke for like 3 hours, you know, like just for ages and ages. And then I think he kind of caught on. I was quite closed off about certain parts of what had gone on, but I think he kind of sussed out there was a story there, and he requested if he could interview us individually and perhaps do it. And the more he worked at it, we did loads and loads of sessions before he kind of got us all to open up. And the more we spoke about it, like it was almost like therapy for all of us, just talking to him separately. And then when we heard the whole podcast together as one piece, it just I was just amazing. It was like lovely to hear each other kind of be at peace with the situation, because sometimes it's hard to talk to each other, and I think that's probably a very negative trait in people. But sometimes it's difficult to share those things, even though you've all been through them at the same time.
No, exactly. It's hard to just prompt unless, you know, you have to talk about it. No, I understand that. But my last question, diving right into it, is obviously with Creeper, you never know. You know, you could think one thing and then something entirely different happens. But is there going to be more to the story of Ro and Annabelle, or is this going to be the concluding chapter of that story and that saga?
This is the end of that chapter. This is the last piece of the puzzle for this. There's going to be some more storytelling on it because we're about to go and promote, and I'm hoping to do a few different projects surrounding it. But musically and in terms of the era of our career, this is the end of that story. So yeah, and it's exciting, isn't it? I think we're about to enter a really exciting part of our career as a band and as musicians. And I think I think we're just getting started a little bit, and I'm really excited about the prospects of that. It's very exciting to be coming out of this pandemic and as well and being in this position. It's exciting.
Well, as a fan, I can't wait to hear it. I know all of our WSOU Under the Stars listeners also can't wait to hear it. American Noir out July 30th. Also, you can hear it on WSOU Tuesday nights, 10 p.m. to midnight. Thank you so much.
No, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. It's lovely talking to you again. And I hope we get to do it in person at some point. That'd be cool.
Absolutely.